Okay, so I'm gonna make sure I get your title right. Your current title is the Director of Diverse Media and Community Impact.
Yes.
Just so that people can understand, so at Revolt we have this rule, and I have a show called The Black Print, and I start all shows the same. It is not our job to control your narrative. It's not my job to say to the world who you are. It is your job to control your own narrative. So if you can, for the people, please introduce yourself, help them understand what it is that you do today, and your journey to get here. How did you get to be in this seat?
Absolutely. First, thank you all for being here. Thanks to the whole entire Blackweek team, Joe Anthony, Hero Collective, for doing this and creating this safe space. Again, my name is Tarshena Armstrong, Director of Diverse Media and Community Impact for General Motors. And what I say that I do at GM is earn cultural capital. I earn cultural capital for our families of brands. Buick, GMC, Chevrolet, Cadillac, OnStar, those are the things that we do internally to make sure that we show up in the community as well. I have been with GM for 17 years.
That's a long time.
The only company I've ever been with. So I started as an internship student, but I feel like I started before. So like a lot of people within the automotive industry, my parents were Southerners. They lived in Mississippi and Louisiana, and they migrated to Michigan for jobs within General Motors. So they set up shop in Flint, Michigan, the best city in the world. So I'm originally from Flint, Michigan. And the first time I knew I was gonna work in automotive was 1994. I went to Take Your Daughter to Work Day. I went to work with my mother. And I saw my mother be more than just my mom. She was actually making a difference for her family, and she wanted to show that. And so, she had starched up my sister and I's, our jeans and everything. But at that also, during that moment, I knew I did not want to be in manufacturing. And so my pathway to get into the marketing space, I was local at the University of Michigan, go Blue, and I was able to intern for our service and parts brand. And so I did marketing for AC Delco, which is one of our parts brands there, and I never left. I started going through research for some old people in the room, if y'all remember Goodrich at the time, getting your vehicle serviced, and then I had an opportunity to go out to the field. And so for most consumers, you see our dealerships. And I had an opportunity to go to the field in Dallas, Texas, and also in Washington, D.C., and be a consultant for our dealers, which really is the heartbeat of our company because that's how we sell vehicles. We consult, make sure that they have the best product, the best services, that they are taking care of the customers the best. Then I had an opportunity to come back home to Michigan. I did retail sales incentives, so the background of everything that has to do with our sales, how much money is on the hood of a vehicle. And then this little black girl from Flint, Michigan had an opportunity to become a business planner. And a business planner at GM is really unique because you get a really good 360 way of looking at the business, from our dealer network to our engineering to portfolio planning, retail, all of the things. So I spent about 5 years with our Buick and GMC team, becoming a business planner there with our VP, and then I got to work in the office of CEO for our CEO, Mary Barra. So I spent about 9 months on a stretch assignment, really learning GM. Our evolution for an all-electric future, which was magical, and then the heels of George Floyd. I always ensured that multicultural diversity talent pipeline was etched in everything that I did in every role, but at this time, GM really wanted to elevate our multicultural practices, and I became the director of diverse marketing. And in that time frame, we really made a difference. And so that evolved into media because everything starts with media. And so now I'm doing diverse media and community impact. But what I love about the community impact of my role is I'm fueling into the community of HBCUs. I'm, participating in Blackweek for some of our initiatives that we have with our incubator funds. So, right now makes the world of difference because I really see the value in what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. You tell the story about how you've had such an incredible career while at GM, and then you start to step into this role right after the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. And you kind of spoke a little bit about why GM kind of went this path. Why did you decide to shift from the office of the CEO into this more equity, multicultural driven work?
You know, at that time, GM and our CEO came out and said, we have the aspiration of being the most inclusive company. And when we say we wanted to be the most inclusive company, that is from our talent pipeline to our supplier diversity. And within that supplier diversity comes our dealer network. GM was one of the first automotive companies to have a minority dealer program where we are ensuring that Black and brown and women have dealerships. We also have a very dedicated supplier diversity program. And so getting into diverse media in this role made me feel as though there was a need within the ecosystem. In 21, we had a lot of headwinds within Black-owned media, and so we went on a listening session. We had over 20 empathy interviews, if you will, with Black-owned media, diverse-owned media, Revolt being one of them. I have to tell y'all about how he called us out.
Just doing my job.
But during those empathy and listening sessions, we had an opportunity to understand what was needed in the ecosystem and not just what GM needed. Like, yes, we're in the business of selling cars and trucks, and if anybody wants to purchase a vehicle, see me afterwards. But what we unpacked during those listening sessions were, number one, there is a need for investment. And during that investment, we decided that we were gonna double our investment into Black-owned media with the long-term goal of achieving 8% by 2025. So I got a huge job to do in 25. We're gonna get to 8%, and we have very trusted partners. I see JM is in the audience, who supports us in a lot of that effort with Kara Densu. But that's number one. We have to ensure that we create consistent impact of investment within the ecosystem. A lot of media owners told us that doing business with GM is hard. You know, you all need to be a little more flexible in some of your demands. One of those were 90-day payment terms. That's very difficult for a small business owner. And so we migrated to a 30-day payment term for diverse agencies, and that was huge. We still get really good feedback on ensuring that that 30 days is important. We also did what we call a media summit, and we actually just held one in Detroit. It was the first time we held one in person, but this media summit allowed us to really showcase what our priorities were in the business so that all of the diverse-owned media owners could adjust their pitches to our business needs, because that's really important. And then we had our CEO say, I hear all these things, but there needs to be more. And so she dedicated $50 million over 10 years to support and scale the media and marketing ecosystem. And this is what you may see some of the logos of GM Invested. GM Invested is a program where we are trying our best beyond investment to really fuel the ecosystem in 3 areas. Business acumen, because what we found is that a lot of these organizations don't have the business acumen to scale. They know how to pitch. Their decks are not very good. The second is analytical capabilities, measurement. I wish I could find like the Black Nielsen. And third is innovative and strategic marketing. I think I saw like Stacy King from Macro. We have a program with them where she developed an initiative where, you know, there's so many things for creators, but there's not many programs for those who are behind the camera, like who is going to be the next Detavio. So she's really fueling in the next executives of the future. We have Bomisi that has been doing things. Oh, hey, Bomisi. Bomisi was one of our first incubator partners, and they're heading into the round 4 of cohorts where they're reaching back and pulling forward. So if you are a media owner that's in like the early stages of your business and you just need support, reach out to Bomisi and apply to be their cohort. So.
Beautiful. I'm grateful that you chose to be in that role. Like when I think about, you know, the ecosystem and how things work, I think about it very similar to how I think about colleges. It's like you need some Black folk to go to HBCUs, and then you need some Black folks to go to PWIs. right? And when you take that lens to a corporate standpoint, you need some of the best talent ever going to our Black-owned media companies, creative companies, et cetera, so that we can help build and elevate that ecosystem. But you also need great people at PWIs or in more traditional corporate America helping to unlock the money, helping to show us the way so that we can help grow our businesses. The next note that I want to hit on that piece is, for me, running a Black-owned media company is like the hardest job you could ever do. In general, I think launching a Black-owned company in general, I think of like most Black-owned companies as like distressed businesses. We are often overlooked, we are underfunded, there's no path to exit, right? Things are just distressed. When you look at it from a media standpoint, winning in this game feels impossible, right? All of the people who are winning today have billions of dollars that they're pouring into technology or content. It takes billions of dollars to build Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, et cetera. It takes billions of dollars to fund everything from Game of Thrones, the Pixar, the Marvel, right? And so the people who are winning in those games, Disney at $80 billion, you have to have that revenue base in order to be able to fund the content. A good series on TV, how much do people think a good season of like a TV show, let's call it Blackish or something, how much do y'all think that costs? 30 million. Anybody want to say anything different than this 30? 60? Okay, so we're just gonna live in that, because I think it's in that world just depending on what you're doing, right? A Blackish probably like a 30 to 40 million. Something like a Game of Thrones is gonna be much higher. How many Black-owned media companies do you believe have $30 million to put into a TV series? Absolutely zero. How do you play a game when you can't even compete with one piece of the product? With one 30-minute show, you can't even compete there. How do you play that game, right? So a very, very, very difficult business to run, which is why we need incredible people like you. Why do you think it is important, given that Black media companies are at such a disadvantage already, why do you think it's important to help uplift, elevate, build Black-owned media companies into larger companies so that we can invest in this type of storytelling, so that we can invest in the technology that can actually help us build billion-dollar companies?
I think that's a great question. When we look at investment, people think that it's just money in folks' pocket. But what people don't realize is that these diverse-owned organizations are taking this money. They can now hire better talent. They can now invest in their business. You know, we were just at NABOB, the National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters, last week, and I had a lady say, because of your investment, I was able to actually purchase a new receiver. It's like, for the radio. I'm like, wow. And so you really don't hear these wins, and just a little goes a long way for a small, diverse-owned business. You know, I think that, you know, it's important that not only GM, because it's not just GM's responsibilities, it is the responsibility of a lot of advertisers to lean in and ensure that diverse-owned media is shown, it thrives. But at least within the automotive industry, less than 5% of the US population is in market for a vehicle. Less than 5%. That means that you're getting a new lease, you just got in a collision, you just had a family, and now you need a 3-row SUV. Less than 5%. You drill that down, and 30% of that 5% is actually people of color who are buying our vehicles. That becomes very difficult. So what we need, the diverse audience and how we can get to that diverse audience is through diverse organizations like Revolts and things like that. It's important because this is the unique audience that is going to fuel our conquest opportunity. By 2045, the minority will be the majority. So we need to get to that audience now before it's too late. So it doesn't become like a charity case. This is a true business decision to ensure that if Black-owned media doesn't thrive, we need that audience. So we need to invest in Black-owned media so we can get the business results that we need.
Yeah, I think that's right. Oftentimes what you see in the data is that Black-owned media has a different relationship with their Black audience. And because they have that different relationship, you're able to drive a different type of conversion. You're able to hit them. You know, we always talk about you're not just reaching them, you're able to touch them, right? Touch them in their soul and in their gut. The other reason why I think it's, you know, I think there's such a clear business case for why to invest in Black-owned media. I think there's also a very clear, like, social case for why to invest in Black-owned media. From my standpoint, I look at it as Black people have never been in control of their own narrative anytime ever. One of my favorite analogies to use this notion of, like, media is this thing of mirrors and windows, right? So for the people who the story it's about, it's a mirror. It tells those people who they are, what they're capable of, what their people have done in the past, and what they're capable of doing in the future. For the people who live outside of that community, it's a window. It tells them, again, same thing. This is what these people have done. This is what they're capable of. Imagine growing up in a world where all of the windows, all of the mirrors have been, like, I always mess, like, circus windows, you know, like funny mirrors when you walk into a little space. Imagine you haven't made any of them, and they're always somebody else's perception of who you are. You walk into moments that are like what's happening right now in this presidential election, where people are talking about Haitians like they're savages, like they're third-class citizens, like they, you know, this whole, like, they eat pets. That's what happens when you don't control your story. That's what happens when you don't control your narrative. And that's a very scary place to be in. Black people have been in that position since the beginning of time, right? So I think there's also a very clear, like, social case, which is we have to allow the people from in a community to program their own community versus looking at them from an outsider perspective and telling them what that is. Okay, I went on all of that walk to say, if there's such a clear business case and there's such a clear social case, why do we believe that brands are having trouble showing up in this moment? You and I were talking about it backstage. You know, Black media had its run in 2021. We had an incredible run in 2022. The affirmative action case comes out in 2023. You start to see things slow down. I'm looking at 2024, and, like, things look very scary and disastrous from the seat that I sit in. So if there's a clear business case and there's a clear social case, why are some brands still not showing up in this moment?
Yeah, I can't speak for other brands, but I know within GM, business is different. You know, just being transparent, we're on this EV future, and we're literally taking money out of the business to fuel the EV space. And so that's very important for our long-term trajectory. But for me, I feel as though measurement is such a huge issue within diverse-owned media. You got to inspect what you expect, is what I always say. And yes, we want to support diverse-owned media, but if the measurement is there, what we need, and we get the business results, it's a better business case to say, we need to invest in Revolt because this brand lift study gave us, you know, X amount of brand health and awareness or purchase consideration. So that's always important. And I feel as though Black-owned media needs to do a better job of the measurement. You know, what are your reach? What is the impression? Is it in a timely manner and things like that? Because that's the only way we're gonna win. You know, one thing that I feel in this role that I have not been able to solve is, you know, I think by, like, next year, more states are issuing different privacy regulations, ethnicity being one of those. So that prevents how we actually target to get to that unique audience because of some of the state regulations. That's going to cause diverse-owned media to even dwindle because now we can't actually target. Now, from a business case standpoint, we know that I can go to Revolt because your audience is going to be Black. It's more than that, but, you know, if it's not language for Hispanic, you know, how do we do things in language? By 2030, 1 in 5 vehicle sales are going to be within the Hispanic community. I have to make a really, really good strategy on how I am going to influence and have the Hispanic community come in and purchase our trucks. GM has the #1 pickup truck for the Hispanic audience for 1 decade. And now as we transition to EVs, it's like, hey, I got to demystify some of this. So I need to work with organizations that can help me demystify some of the pain points of EV adoption for Black and brown folks. I can't do that unless I partner with a multicultural agency. So I think in all of that is understanding where these organizations, where are their gaps? What are their goals? For GM, it's all electric future. Me personally, I feel like we have done so much branded content in the past with people, road trips. Like, I remember even back in the day when Gail and Oprah did a road trip. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. But I need people to do the road trip in an EV vehicle, because that's where our future is. Or how do we demystify some of the pain points of range, of price, of charging, and also working within the community on infrastructure. So it's making sure that people, when you are pitching the business, that you are really pitching it with their organizational goals in mind. That's how you get more business.
So you guys have done an incredible job setting up, again, commitments, dedicated dollars flowing into diverse-owned media, investment funds. And you talk about some of the reasons why it sounds like Black people are having trouble unlocking some of this money is a measurement issue. There's another one that I would just call a brief issue. You got to get really good at knowing the brief and like hitting the brief squarely in the head. Like if you say it's EV, then EV is what you need to deliver. Are there any other challenges, obstacles, patterns that you see in terms of Black people trying to unlock money from General Motors, but maybe not knowing all that they need to know? Like, what are the other gems? What are the other rules? If you want to come unlock the money that we have, you have to make sure you're doing these 3 to 5 things.
I would say don't be afraid to partner with other organizations. You know, when I look at what we need, we're heavy into digital, heavy into programmatic, and not all diverse-owned vendors have those capabilities. So how can you partner with another organization to help you get the tools and the resources you need to be successful? I just had this conversation with Charles Cantu of Reset Digital. They do an excellent job there, but how can he partner with some of the diverse-owned media to give you the resources you need to be successful if we're leaning into digital and programmatic? Because that's how you're unlocking a lot of the investment dollars. And if you aren't innovating in that space and willing to adapt to new technologies, you might not win. You know, you talked about like innovation in the space and how you take that investment to fuel the business, but we also have to look at like AI. Like, how are Black-owned media using AI to influence their briefs, influence the output, influence targeting? But then we have to look in the input. We know that Gen AI is great, but if we're not in the rooms or doing things to input the cultural nuances of, hey, Black people have a huge affinity for HBCU, homecoming, culture, Gen AI is not going to pick up the heartbeat of the community. So how are we using new technologies like AI to help the output be better for our community, to pick up on some of those cultural nuances? So it's a lot, but being adaptable to the change in the environment and knowing that sometimes you may not get investment, you know, but how do you still nurture the relationships? How do you still craft, you know, new business opportunities, and also not putting all your eggs in one basket? You know, automotive, I think in general, there's a lot of automotive companies who do invest in Black-owned media, but go after other organizations and other advertisers, because there's money out there. But partner, see how you can, you know, do pilots and things of that nature also helps too.
Yeah, so 3 clear things I heard is this notion of like, don't be afraid to partner and collaborate. There's strength in numbers. One of my favorite quotes is, surely we will all hang together, otherwise we will all hang separately, right? So this notion,
say that again for the people in the back.
Surely we should all hang together, or we will all hang separately, right? We don't want that to be our truth, so don't be afraid to collaborate. There's also this notion of innovation. What I always found, like, you know, from being on the inside of Black companies for a long time, I always felt like Black companies were a step behind. So as, you know, mass media was getting into digital, we were just getting TV dollars. We were excited about that, right? I always feel like as people were getting into TV, we were just getting radio dollars. Like, I always feel like we were one step behind, and part of what I hear you say is, and I think about this all the time, sometimes we're so underfunded and under-resourced, it doesn't make sense to try to tap whatever the very next thing is. When I listen to you talk about AI and innovation, it's like sometimes you got to leapfrog 2 or 3 things so that you can just skate to where the puck is going, as opposed to trying to play these older games. I hear you saying, like, make sure you're being innovative. Now, one of the things that you keep talking about that I love is in order to invest in AI, you need money. And I keep hearing you kind of dimensionalize what I see as like the difference between a media buy versus media investment, right? All support doesn't look the same. Some checks come and look and feel very differently. Can you talk about what it looks like to invest, not just the media buy, but to invest beyond the check? And then do you have any fun examples of, times where GM has done that?
Absolutely. It takes production dollars. It takes, working with agencies. It's a journey to even get the media placement, to produce, to do custom content. We all know that, the multicultural audience does love custom content. It performs better. So we understand that. But it's a labor of love, to say the least. We had an opportunity in 21 to do an initiative where Dentsu Good partnered with NABOB for a podcast series called More Than That with Gia Peppers. And shout out to Gia, she's really dope. But within this podcast series, there were a host of advertisers who came in to support the initiative. But what was so magical is the culture, what it brought. There was episodes on wellness, on Juneteenth, on family dynamics. And so it was really tugging at the heartstrings. But there's production costs that come with it. She actually just won a Mosaic Award because the production company, everyone, I want to say, is 90% BIPOC. That's huge. So not only is the investment fueling the creators, it's also fueling the craft services, all of the things, and that becomes magic. That's that downstream revenue that really helps the community. But what was great is we tied the Gia Peppers More Than That to one of our brands, Buick. Buick is a phenomenal brand, legacy brand, 53% women buyers. And so targeting women with Gia Peppers to a historical brand like Buick was a match made in heaven. Now, when I talk about measurement, a lot of these organizations don't have the capacity to do brand lift studies. We had a brand lift study that we did. Not only does this brand lift study allow us to understand how we performed in the marketplace or what we may need to pivot next time, but this allows More Than That to go out and get other advertisers. Because sometimes if it's good enough for GM, it could be good enough for another advertiser. And so using that brand lift study is huge. I want to come back to brand lift studies because within our incubator fund, we partner with an organization named Pilotly. And we have the opportunity to do some brand lift studies, not just for GM, but we want to make sure that the Black and brown community within your media buys, you have that opportunity. So if you want to do a brand lift study, you'll have to connect with me because we may have an opportunity for you to do something. But with the Gia Peppers More Than That, it performed so well. Increase in brand for me, increase for positive sentiment on the brand. These are the measurement that we need to say, okay, this is yielding us a great profit because people are going and buying vehicles. Right now, we're getting into something called HVBs. So within measurement, HVBs are high-value behaviors. And we believe these HVBs are behaviors that consumers do to purchase vehicles. So what's the call to action? So usually when we did things with Gia Pepper, she would do a voiceover, and the call to action would be, learn more about the Buick Envista at X URL. And that's trackable. But what the magic happens in the HVBs that we're monitoring is, does that media allow this consumer to go onto the Buick website, drill down, purchase the vehicle, go to a dealer, locate, check their credit, or build a vehicle online? Those are some of those buying behaviors that we feel are needed to actually purchase a vehicle. They're lower funnel. What was great about the Gia Preppers program, because it performed so well, we said, hey, you all should think about doing a video series. She did a video series, and the video series was phenomenal because now we have the brain integration of the vehicles going out to entrepreneurs. We had a call of action where a Buick donated and matched dollars for the Thurgood Marshall because one of the episodes was filmed on Howard's campus. So one thing I like to do is a 360. I always think that you're not to take from this world, you're to give back. And so ensuring that organizations like the Thurgood Marshall benefited from being included in the video series was magical. But guess what? We needed a diverse-owned partner to, you know, stream the platform. And where did we go? We went to Revolt.
Hey!
But things like that, when you have it diverse-owned podcast for audio and NABOB stations, then you do video and you complement it with a diverse-owned media organization like Revolt that gives you the results you need, that's when that investment really makes impact, just not for you, but for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I'll give you a round of applause for that one. Okay, so again, you know, I'm such a fan and love the work that you're doing. So we talk about investing beyond just a check, which you heard. So I started out by saying, how many Black-owned media companies do you think can even afford to make something, right? Part of what you're saying is because we know that they don't always have the dollars to invest in programming, you're calling them production dollars, like we're helping to fund and give them production dollars so they can create content that they want to make that they wouldn't otherwise be able to make. So I love that. The other piece you're talking about is as you start to see wins with Black-owned media companies here and there, you are also then pulling back and saying, A, how do we grow this content, this IP that we've created? How do we grow it together? And then B, how do we then get this to funnel across multiple Black-owned media companies, specifically in the spaces where these people have expertise and can deliver, right? So I love all of that. I don't think most people in your seat are thinking in that way, so I just want to celebrate you for that. And then for the people in the crowd, those of us who may be on the other side, like when she says partner together, I think these are the types of things we have to be doing. We have to be talking to each other about what content, what programming can we make together? How do we then go into a GM and say, we want to make this content IP, and it's going to live like this on Revolt, and it's going to live like this over here. And I think we would need our brand partners to do that work, but I think us as a ecosystem should also be doing that work together. I know we're supposed to open it up for Q&A, so I have one more question before I do that. And then we'll see where we go from there. But this one's not intended to be hairy or crazy. It's anchored in politics, but I'm not trying to catch you up. We are in the midst of what I believe to be the most consequential election in American history. Who you voting for? Just kidding. When I talk to a lot of brands, you know, about what their strategy for 2025 looks like, a lot of them, some of them feel like they have a wait-and-see approach, that depending on who's going to be in office, they may play the strategy very differently. From your seat and the way that you and GM are thinking about it, does the strategy change based on who's in office, or does the strategy stay the same regardless of who gets the highest seat in the world?
Now, I will say I'm in diverse media, so our public policy team will be, you know, doing all of the political affiliations and all of those things. However, what I will say is within our marketing organization and within our broader organization as a whole, when we say we want to be the most inclusive company in the world, we stand by that. We stand by that. And so we made a commitment in 21 that 8% by 25 was going to be our Black-owned media investment. We are committed to hitting that goal. We are committed.
I'm going to give you that.
So we are committed to hitting that goal. We will commit it. It's on my performance review. So I want to jump.
It's going to get it. Yeah.
We're going to get the 8%.
Yeah.
We're going to get there. But it goes beyond that. We also made commitments to scale the ecosystem. So the incubator fund is there. What I will say is that business changes, our environment changes, and we do have to adapt to our organizational standards. But as far as our diverse zone commitment, if it's good for business, if it sells cars, 2045, minority will be the majority. And so we have to make sure that we resonate culturally with that audience now. So I think we're going to stand behind everything, especially on our investment front.
Yeah, I love that answer. A couple of reasons. One, 8% was the highest commitment that I believe was established between 21 and 2022. Is that correct?
Well, I can't speak to other organizations, but where we got the 8% is we partner really closely with S&P Global. And they give all of our customer data, customer registrations, and the automotive marketplace, 8% is the number that the market share of Black folks who are purchasing vehicles, not just at GM, but across all automotive. So we felt that you need to be reflective of the audience that you serve, so 8% became that benchmark. Now, should we adjust what that looks like based on the actual automotive industry? Absolutely. And so, that 8% was, it wasn't a magical number. We were very intentional about, okay, what does the data tell us we need to be at? So we will adjust going forward, but we're gonna stay whole for 25.
Yeah, well, I'll give you your flowers. I'll do it for you. One, I just think that the math, even the way that you backed into the math, is the right way. What is the share that Black people are contributing to the marketplace? Let's put this in the Black-owned media, Black-owned creators, and if everybody did that, the world would freaking be a different place just off of that one thing. Two, for the 8%, most people, when it came out, the story was Black-owned media is 1% of the market. Most people said we're going to get Black-owned media to 2% of the market. Some people said 4% of the market. So when you see people who are coming out with numbers like 8% of the market, it's dramatically different and further than anybody else in the market was willing to do. And then, if that wasn't enough to give you your flowers, again, we have this whole thing where since 2023, affirmative action, Ed Bloom, Robbie Starbucks, the right wing attacking brands, you're seeing brands abandon the 4% commitment, abandon the 2% commitment. By the way, the best understanding we have about the real data is Black-owned media wasn't even at 1% to begin with. We were like at 0.5%. And I think we've gotten to somewhere like 1.87%. So we haven't even gotten to the 2%. And brands are already retreating, and brands are already retrenching. And so when you see a brand who is making commitments far beyond what everybody else is doing, when you see a brand who's saying, it actually doesn't matter who's in office, what's good for business is good for business, we just gonna do what the heck we said we were gonna do, like, I think those brands deserve to be celebrated. So I'll celebrate you, and I'll give you
celebrate by buying a car. Buy a car, people.
Yeah, y'all go buy a car so she can validate the money that we're spending. So anyways, I want to give you your flowers and just show you love, because from my seat, you just don't see too many people willing to stand in the fire, willing to back their words with the deeds to support it. It's so much of it felt performative, so much of it felt empty, and now so much of it feels invisible. So I just want to celebrate you for not being on that, but for doing amazing work. Okay, question and answers. I don't know how this is supposed to work, but if anybody got questions, you could actually just scream it out, and she and or I will answer. Anybody got questions? Okay. Whew. Man, I was like, man, we failed.
So Tarshena, this has been an amazing journey that you've been on with diverse-owned media. So I'm curious, what has been the biggest positive surprise that you've encountered in this journey?
The biggest positive surprise, at least for me, is, I feel as though, we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. So, hearing people within, the marketplace say, no, you're actually on the right road feels good. But also talking with other advertisers that they don't have it figured out either. I think that has been surprising, because we, just want to do so well, and we try to score ourselves, but just to see that we're trying to make inroads is good. So that's been really positive. I think from a community impact pillar, for me, is seeing an organization start off and then flourish into a thriving business and scaling them is really good. That's what it's all about, is how does that small organization become a revolt? How do they, become an urban one? So that's been really rewarding.
Yeah, I'm gonna celebrate you. I got you next. If someone can get the microphone here, I have a question here, and then we'll do that one next.
I talk loud.
You talk loud? Okay. Well, what did you just talk about? You just talked about, I still want to celebrate you. I was trying to find my path to celebrating you. What'd you just say? It'll come.
I talked about, a new up-and-coming media owner.
Yeah,
how
that's
they feel
it.
to
that's
become
it. Okay.
a larger
Thank
organization.
you. A lot of people, when they made commitments, I feel like they lost track of why they made the commitment. And you started seeing money that was dedicated to Black-owned, diverse-owned spill into things that were more Black-targeted, but not Black-owned. And the conversation became around trying to reach Black audiences. But the way that this whole thing started was never about reaching Black audiences. The way the whole thing started was Black-owned media companies are underfunded, under-resourced, and we need to change the freaking media landscape. And so when you have brands that are not playing just by spreadsheets or playing by dollars, but they're saying, no, we're here because we're trying to create more revolts. We're here because we're trying to create more urban ones. Again, you will be hard-pressed to find a lot of brands who still have that North Star. And so I want to say, yeah.
But just on that, we do want everyone to become, a large organization because we don't have inventory to buy sometimes. That's a huge issue. The inventory is not there. The quality inventory is not there. So when you do become an organization that can scale, it's better for us because that's the unique audience we can get.
My German share Siri trying to talk to you. Not my English Siri, sorry. Okay.
And, what you just said is so important because one of the, like our business, we have 6 applications. We're ad-supported video on demand. We are totally set up programmatically. We have Google DV360, Magnite, SpringServe, CTV.
Where you been at? Where you been?
Well, we just actually started working with publicists, and we just launched a campaign with publicists for GM a week ago. So we're now currently actually selling you video inventory actively.
Let's
go.
But
the challenge that we've had is, and we've got about 20,000 pieces of content, music, movies, television, gaming, articles, etc. In terms of measurement, we're integrated with Microsoft, so we're fully gamified, so we measure everything. Everything on our site is, on all of our sites, all of our stuff is fully measured, so when you start talking about Black Nielsen, we get it, okay? The challenge that we have is, how do we meet Tarshena Armstrong, right? Because, like, from the sales perspective, we have a very challenging time getting the word out there that we're around and we're available and that you could be buying our inventory on an active basis. And so that's the challenge. Because if it's LinkedIn or whatever,
I hate LinkedIn.
All good. But how do we meet people like you? How do we meet marketers? So I guess that's my question.
And I say that because I'm a person. LinkedIn just becomes so transactional to me.
Right.
People use it very well, so I'm not going to be a hater. However, what I will say, and I'm going to tell y'all the story about when Detavio called us out in front of our CEO. Okay. So it was our CEO, myself, our CMO, Chief DE&I officer, all on this call. This is our empathy listening session. And he starts off and says, I commend you all. This is great. All women on this call, leaders within GM. We're like, okay, great. He said to us, very boldly, because this man is very bold, he said, you all have the stigma of being very cold. There's no open door policy. You don't want to talk to us, things like that. And we're like, wow. But it was a listening session. But because of that, like Detavio has access, right? He's a large person within the Black-owned media game. What does that mean for a person who is on a smaller scale? I have an open door policy. So if you email me, I will talk to you. We can't do everything. We don't have the budgets to do everything. However, what champion and put fire under us is we need to build these relationships. So it goes beyond transactional. We created what we call the GMRoadToEquity.com. So GMRoadToEquity.com. This is our media hub for GM. If you have an organization that you think is worthy, you want to monetize, please go on to this website because you can submit an RFI. It goes to our team. We review it. We will have a session to understand your capabilities, but also on this media hub, you have links to all of our archives of our summits. This tells you our priorities, where our business is going, and we also have resources. So if you check it, you understand that we have market industry sessions. We have lunch and learns on programmatic and digital. So it becomes a resource hub. We have case studies on examples of what thrived. And you also can submit information if you have a pitch or you want to submit for our GM Invested program. So gmroadtoequity.com, that's how you can reach us. That's if you want to do business with GM, I encourage you to go there. So.
Beautiful. Last one before we get out of here. You can scream? Okay.
I'm a student at Princeton University, and I'm just starting my career. And I was wondering, what's the largest roadblock you face, and how did you overcome it?
The question is, what is the largest roadblock you've ever faced, and how did you overcome it?
I have two. There's an art of networking. I was networking inside of GM. It really wasn't until I took this role that I expanded my network outside of GM. There is diversity of thought outside of like your unique workspace. So I was not networking enough, in my opinion, when I first started my career. I think I probably could be further along if I did network. So ensuring the network and also being bold. I was not being my authentic self. Like very early on in my career, I was kind of embarrassed that my parents were UAW workers or, that I wasn't a silver spooner. But that gave me the grit I needed to elevate my career and my work ethic. So not being my authentic self really didn't shape how I was, doing in my career. Because when I bring my entire self to work, I thrive. So I would say networking and just being authentic to yourself.
And then my quick note on that is life is nothing but roadblocks. That's all you're going to get. So for me, the strategy is just to get really good at running into a roadblock and saying, I actually don't give a damn, and pushing right through it, right? You're going to have to do that 1,000 times in your life, and the quicker you can be good at doing that, the better we'll all be. Tarshena Armstrong, thank you for giving us your wisdom, fighting for us internally, supporting Revolt from Gia Peppers, the Killer Mike. We appreciate you. Thank you, Queen.